Welcome to the Level Set. And I am joined this morning by the Dr. Charles Alexander and the Mike Jones. I am attorney Larry Fields, and we are anticipating attorney Jerry L. JT Christmas sometime this morning. But this is one of the most important seasons of the year, as far as I'm concerned, with respect to the calendar. We have gone directly from the celebration of Christmas. Now we are in the throes of Kwanzaa. And we are going to attempt to delve into the subject of Kwanzaa after we have been in community this year with the founder of Kwanzaa, Dr. Karinga. We've had the benefit of doing so. And if you'd like to see that show, you can find that on YouTube. But we had a wonderful exchange with the founder of Kwanzaa. And with no further delay, I'm going to get right into it and give you a brief description of Kwanzaa, and then we're going to open it up because the principles related to Kwanzaa are things that we need to be fully engaged and satisfying all year long. So Kwanzaa, as many of you know, is an African American and Pan African holiday which celebrates family, community, and culture. It was created in 1966 by Dr. Malena Karenga, a professor of African Studies, and Kwanzaa is a 7-day cultural festival which begins December 26th and ends January the 1st. It joins communitarian values and practices of continental African and African American culture. During the holiday, families and communities organize activities around Nguza, Saba, the seven principles, Umoja, which translates to unity, uh, Kajalia, self-determination, Ujima, which is where we are today, collective works and responsibility. And we'll hear more about that from the panel today. Ujima, cooperative economics, Nia, purpose, Kuumba, creativity, and finally, Amani, faith, which is the first day of the year. And we are going to need faith to exercise and execute all of these issues. I mean, this is a perfect 7 days as far as I'm concerned. Participants also celebrate with feast, karuma, music, dance, poetry, narratives, and end the holiday with a day dedicated to reflection and recommitment to the seven principles and other central culture values. And what that reminds me of is the great Carter G. Woodson and Black History Month. When you talk about reflection and moving forward at the same time, and like I said, I don't think there's a more perfect 7 days. And Mike Jones, as we sit here on the, directly uh, in the throes of the day in which we reflect and celebrate collective works, what comes to mind for you?
Uh, well, first, first of all, I was I was coming into adulthood when Brother Karinga created Kwanzaa, and th- that whole thing kind of grew was really at the height of the Black Power, Black empowerment moment in America, and it really was about a recognition that American culture and traditions did not work for us as Black people, and that, as Sister Audrey says, you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools, and culture and identity you have to create for yourself. If somebody gives you the culture and gives you your identity, you'll always be a captive of their definitions. So, Brother Karenga, and that was a major thrust, and one of the tensions back in the '60s for us, I'll call it second generation resistance fighters. Dr. King and them was the first was this notion of culture versus class or culture versus economics. And and there was we never found a way to put them both together because I've always seen them as the yin and the yang of our reality. Okay, and to try to find some harmony between those two things. So it's not either or, because you can have a backwards ass, authentically black cultural set of mores, okay, and you can have a very sharp economic critique of our condition that's really kind of vacuous because it doesn't contain any innate organic value. So someplace in here we have to figure out, and we're still struggling with it. How do we blend those two things so that they represent our understanding of the world and who we are in the universe? And that's an ongoing struggle. Having said that, what I think is interesting about this particular day in Kwanza, collective work and responsibility, is basically an anti-capitalist construct for how you view work, the economy, commercial activity. And what has always troubled me about us is the one thing white America has infected us with is we're as superficial as they are. Okay, and it's really our undoing. Okay, uh, in advanced human civilizations, the United States are the intellectual lightweights, and we have inherited that same bad habit. So we get all excited about the superficial, ceremonial stuff, and never have any time for why these ceremonies exist. So we can dress up, we can parade, we can even feast, but we never have a take a moment to understand that these rituals exist because of some values and a perspective for the universe that we have. And the rituals are designed to remind you and reinforce your commitment to it. Because if we could make that connection, even in the belly of the beast, our experience with each other would be different because it used to be different because it had to be different. I think, and that was the overt uh, white oppression that we suffered from for almost 350 years, and now we suffer from the same oppression, but it's not as overt. We move from a 1984 model of oppression to a brave new world. I mean, we can get high, have a good time, but fundamentally, you're still just as alienated and messed up. So I think all of them, all of the seven principles are important, and you can't separate them. But if I had to pick one to get us to really understand and focus on, it would be this one. Because if we could nail this one, we would naturally gravitate to the others. Because once you get into the notion of cooperative economics, you kind of withdrawn from the American construct. You're working in it, but you're in it, but you're no longer of it. And once you get there, these other principles start to play, and they reinforce the same thing. And It's our inability to be reflective, and we won't be reflective at the end of this week either. Okay, we'll have Kwanzaa ceremonies all over the place, but there won't be that moment of reflection for us collectively. And you mentioned Carter G. Woodson, who I think is the most underrated, unrecognized ancestor in that great pantheon of ancestors. And what he has always said to us about our miseducation and what we don't understand about who we are and what we need to be. Uh, and we struggle. And until we correct that, there won't be any tactical solutions to our strategic problems that ultimately will work.
The first few statements that you made you hit on something that's I think the crux of it, and you stated the resistance of Kwanzaa. You know something about and that's exactly what this is. When I think about the machine, the capitalistic machine of America, I think about August Wilson's um, uh, reflection on B.F. Skinner's experiment where he had two.
Amos Wilson,
I'm sorry. Uh, I'm a huge fan of August Wilson
but
as
we
well.
like them both. We
I
like
That's
them.
love
right.
them both, but Amos Wilson, that's correct. You know exactly where I'm going, Doc. But and as I delve into your territory, just a smidgen, I'm not going to stay long, just a smidgen. But there were two control groups in B.F. Skinner's work. There was a control group that was punished. They did what they were over time. They learned to do what they were supposed to do, and there was a control group that was rewarded. These were the individuals that were also rewarded. But what we fail to understand is that both groups are under the control of the experimenter. That's America in a nutshell. And we refuse to understand that. So when Dr. Karinga has something this groundbreaking, and I mean, this in itself, Mike, you hit it so plainly. You are not of the system. You're in it, but you're not of it. That's why this is so very, very important because each and every one of these principles are antithetical to what the system has laid out. Dr. Alexander, please.
Um, and that as per usual, D. Mike Jones, put something on our mind, and I've really always thought about the Nguzo Saba sequentially. In this context, it's kind of hard for us to do it sequentially because this place is fundamentally materialistic. So we gotta be in 3 and 4. That's where we gotta start. We gotta start with Ujima and Ujama. Right. So in order to turn heads, we gotta be in that, collective work and responsibility and cooperative economic space. And if we're in those spaces, that's what pulls people, that's kind of what ends up fostering the the unity. Now, I absolutely believe that unity should come first, and or maybe Kuji maybe self-determination is first. But in this distorted space, we're so we've internalized all that the United States is, and so we're gonna be in that we're gonna be in that economic space. However downtrodden the masses are, we're gonna be in that space, and we're gonna be vulnerable to all of the conversation about having. Literally, we're vulnerable to the haves and have-nots. Where we struggle with today's principle, you know, the collective work and responsibility is that we want to displace the responsibility. We're responsible for the least of these. We keep thinking that the beast that is ultimately responsible for the least of these is also going to be the entity that rescues the least of these. And that's not going to happen. That's why we got least of these. And so the system has created a permanent underclass. And we keep thinking that that same system is going to be the savior of that permanent underclass. And so those of us who ascend, it's our responsibility to go back, like all of these phrases that we like to say, it takes a village, each one teach one, all that kind of stuff. Many of us aren't doing that. That is our responsibility. And so today is about that. Today is about us looking at the lay of the land, knowing the fight that's before us, and doing what we could do within our measure. We don't necessarily, at an individual level, have to be the person that kills the beast. But what we do have to commit to is what we can do in our measure. How do we fight the fight at the level at which we exist for the benefit of the masses? And we don't have to even think of it as saving 10. We could do just what I just referenced. If the four of us all positively impact one other person, that is tremendous. And so we get overwhelmed by the scale of the work, right? And so we'll be like, well, first of all, so we get overwhelmed, and then once we get overwhelmed, we're vulnerable to blaming the victim. So we'll get overwhelmed, and then we'll be like, well, niggas don't want no better, no way, to justify that we're overwhelmed. We got to do the work all the time. If not us, then who? That's what that's what the principle is about, right? And so that's what today is about. That's what the 7 principles are about. Because we're in this, and one of the things I think that's lost on us. I'm sorry, I got off real quick. We're in this system. What we have forgotten, and what we forget every day, even though it's still right in front of us, we are currency. That's why we came here. That's why we ain't come here. That's why they brought us here. And that's been the nature of our relationship to this thing the whole time. And so we gotta be in 3 and 4. We gotta be thinking. We gotta be thinking, collective work and cooperative economics, because that is our relationship to this thing. We got to flip it, but that is the relationship, right? And then ultimately, we get down to the end, we get down to a mind. We got to have that faith in ourselves that we can do it, right? But that faith requires that we appreciate that we're united. We got a common goal. We got a common interest. And so we can't be vulnerable to the, we can't be vulnerable to the classism. But again, that's kind of endemic to this space. We got to fight that and understand that regardless of however much money you got, so there's somebody that thinks that what's brother's name, Dave Stewart. There's some people that think Brother Stewart, who in the past month has become the richest Black man in America, right? That he's beyond all of this. He ain't. He's a second-class citizen too, right? And so when we start talking about him, now we're really just talking about what manner of slave, right? And so we got to understand that this thing is what it is. Last week we was talking about, when Gerald was talking about, the piece about, maybe this will cause us to do da 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 da. And I've been thinking about that all week. It's like we can't prescribe white supremacy. By definition, we can't prescribe it. It's white supremacy. We can't prescribe it because it don't even count us. We don't have no power to determine whether or not white supremacy exists or how it exists, because it's white supremacy. White supremacy supersedes us in its very foundation. We have the power to resist, right? And so when we're looking at all of this in this context, again, we got to come together, and we got to be collective and cooperative, right? So we got umoja. That's the unity. That's the coming together. So we got to come together in order to be cooperative. I mean, collective and cooperative. And we got to be self-determined. So that's Kuji Shagalia. And, so we got to do these things. We got to live Kawita. We got to live Kwanza. We got to live these principles, which is, to the Mike Jones' point, is that this was one of those crowning moments in the struggle. This was about how, to use another thing. So Mike always talks about, in you and Attorney Christmas world, the theory of the case, right? That's what Kawita is. That's what Kwanzaa is. This is the social theory. We just got to pivot to it. We got to turn. Now it's a hard fight.
It is.
Because white supremacy exists, and so we look at each of these points. We got to be creative. Kuma. We got to be creative in how we fight this fight. And we got to look at all of the things. And so last week we was talking about, is Israel a model? Not really. First of all, we did all of that first. We did all of that before. And the reason it didn't work for us is because of white supremacy. The reason it works for them is because of white supremacy, and they are white supremacists. But if you read Herzl, there ain't nothing that he's saying that hadn't already been said. You can go back to you can go back to David Walker's appeal. There's nothing that Herzl said that David Walker hadn't already said.
David Walker.
There's nothing that he said that Frederick Douglass ain't already said.
Nothing.
So what worked is that ultimately they are white, and the Zionists, not all Jews, but the Zionists are white supremacists. And that's what worked. And so we got to break these things down and look at them as being what they are. But we got to look at those 7 principles as a way of life. And we can't get caught up with white supremacy. White supremacy will have us fit this into these 7 days. which is what white supremacy has done. It's co-opted Kwanza. Right? It's another way to get people to spend money. We got to look at the seven principles as a way of life.
Absolutely. And
Yep.
we have been joined by the Jerry L. Christmas, and once again he's trying to upstage us. Look like he's got it looked like he got his outfit from Karinga, uh,
Right.
Ah,
and he's looking good this morning. Gerald, I know you have almost been ahead of the curve in terms of your adoption of these principles, and not just that, but the broadcasting of them to multi generations. And you have facilitated these principles for quite some time. I'm anxious to hear from you on today, and I want to let you know that in the green room, we were talking about creating a university press as well as a think tank at a local school. And D. Mike Jones knocked it out of the park again when he stated, we're like Steph Curry, and that we need more help. We just don't have enough help as we look on this day. That certainly centers around the collectiveness of us. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I agree with everything's been said, Larry, and I have to give credit. It was my mother who first embraced the whole Kwanzaa celebration and just, really brought it all the way home as far as us celebrating Kwanzaa on a regular basis and having the traditional celebration at the end of Kwanzaa on New Year's Day. But as Dr. Alexander said, it's a way of living. We have to adopt these principles as a way of living. And this one in particular, when we talk about collective work and responsibility, because you're absolutely right. We need more help because it's overwhelming, the need that we have. And we cannot do it unless we're working together collectively. And everybody, no matter what you're doing, whatever your profession is, it needs to be tied to a mission. It's not enough just to be a lawyer. Your being an attorney has to be tied to a mission that's moving our people forward. Whether you're doing carpentry, whether you're doing plumbing, whether you are a psychologist, whatever you are doing, it has to be tied to a mission. And that's what, I try to do. And what I program is based on these principles because we tell them at a young age, if you can live by these principles at a young age, as you grow older, it will only get better and better for you. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a struggle because as Dr. Alexander said, we are always dealing with white supremacy and trying to figure out how we deal with that and how we move forward, and especially how we move forward as we have integrated and moved out of our communities, which makes it even harder to have that collective work and responsibility. I'd like to hear Mike comment on that. When we were all in one community, it was much easier to help each other, to work together collectively, as opposed to when we're all over the city now and trying to bring people together collectively. Because a lot of individuals don't believe that this is their problem anymore. They don't live in these areas. They don't see the need to invest in them. But yet, when I drive through North St. Louis and I see some of the housing and the street conditions, I know it's because we are not working together collectively to address these issues. And the issues are so large that we have to be working together in order to address them. And our people are in so much need. And that's just what's so problematic for me is that you are absolutely correct. It can become overwhelming, but you do have to approach this one piece at a time because you're just not going to put the whole puzzle together right away. But we all have to do our part and keep pushing the whole idea of these principles, having unity, having self-determination. cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, creativity. Sometimes we hang too hard on creativity. We hang there and we don't look at all some of these other principles that we need to be addressing. But
It
these
borders on
principles,
escapism sometimes.
it's absolutely right. Absolutely right. But we have, we have to use our creativeness in the sense of all of these principles also, because we look at, we celebrated 50 years of hip hop with our creativeness and what we've done to change that culture. But what have we really done with that to change our people? With the gangster rap, with the over sexualization of the women right now in women's rap, what are we teaching little girls? You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm not knocking anybody that's out here trying to improve themselves and make a living for themselves, but you do have to be conscientious of the message that you send it to so many young girls now, because the amount of, if you on social media, the amount of videos that you see of young girls, very young girls, I'm saying, 3 to 7, 8 years old, twerking and twisting, what that's going to do as they get older. If you ingrain that in their minds right now, what that's going to lead to. That's going to lead to broken homes. That's going to lead to early sexual activity, early pregnancies. We know that. We've seen that. And at this point in 2020, getting ready to be 2025, we have to know better. And we seen so many deaths in the industry, and we see what's going on now with Sean Combs and the fact that he can't even get bond. Now, from a legal standpoint, we all know you're innocent until proven guilty. You have to lay the facts out on that, but I don't see any reason why the man shouldn't have a bond.
A half $1 billion can't get you bonded out. A $500 million can't get you bonded out for a nonviolent crime.
Right. I know for a nonviolent crime, Larry, I'm out on bond. It's ridiculous, but it goes back to that white supremacy that Dr. Alexander talked about, that we still are not facing head on. And I think because of the way that we came into this country, we have a certain attachment to white people that is problematic. And it's sometimes I think Dr. Alexander is subconscious. I don't even know if we're conscious of it. This I don't know if it's a master servant attachment but there's some type, because of this existence, this supremacy, and the way that we had to fight through it, there is a large population that we just have this attachment with this white supremacy that some people don't want to let go.
It's a lot of different ways that you can explain that. It's a lot of, so you got Stockholm syndrome, you got identification with the aggressor, or you just got fundamentally, internalized racism, right? And so we have internalized, the philosophy, the way of being of the enemy, right? And so
it's like it's our roadmap, it's our blueprint. Our blueprint. I know. But that's what's so weird about it. Our blueprint is white supremacy, and we've adopted that. We will move our children and ourselves into spaces that we know are supremacist spaces, and think that it's going to be a better outcome. That's how you know that it's going to be a better outcome for our people.
You are absolutely right, attorney, that's how we know that we're traumatized, because our threat matrix is off.
Right. That's exactly right. There we go. That's a t-shirt. Our threat matrix is off, because we don't see them as the fundamental enemy, and we will not accept it. And if we say that they're the fundamental enemy, then I'm too aggressive.
All white people ain't bad. So we start saying
Right,
simple stuff, right? All white people ain't
right.
bad. Well, I ain't talking about them then. So I ain't talking about the bad. I ain't talking about the ones that ain't bad. I'm talking about I'm talking about the ones that's bad.
Well, you all are
So
Yeah,
revisiting the point that Mike Jones made last week. That you have got to have be deboned of self-respect to put up with what we put up with and still want to participate in a situation like this. I
I,
mean, it just makes absolutely it doesn't make as my mom would say, it doesn't make dog sense.
that's why yesterday, that's why the principle of yesterday is important, right? So that's why you got to have that self determination. That's why you have to be able to establish who you are, right? And so again, the most fundamental, our fundamental problem is psychological misorientation. Our point of reference is white people. It ain't even white people, it's white supremacists.
It is. I mean,
That is our fundamental orientation. And so because we are misoriented, everything else goes awry. So that's black psychology. That's
But how do you
Lily Fuller.
reorient? I guess that's what I don't understand is how do we reorient
This
while being in this situation?
Kwanza.
Gerald,
And, and that's Nelly Fuller. Nelly Fuller said, you don't understand white supremacy, everything else will simply confuse you. And so that's fundamental to our problem. And that's the basis of psychological misorientation. Go ahead, Mike Jones. I'm sorry.
no problem. I want to go back to something, Charles. I think you said, and it is a response to what you and Gerald were talking about. What we have to be, and everybody's not going to be that. They're not going to be there. You have to be in the resistance. So the reality is, if you took every successful liberation movement uh, throughout human history, it has never been a function of the majority of people. The
No.
majority of British colonists in North America did not want to be independent of England, but Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and those guys did. And they didn't worry about the fact that this wasn't what everybody wanted. They decided this is the way they needed to go, and they organized who they could organize, and they became the resistance to Great Britain, and understanding that most people will always be passive. If you think about the civil rights, but the civil rights movement, everybody's grandfather marched with Dr. King. Wasn't none of these motherfuckers with Dr. King. Okay, you got your ass kicked, you got sent to jail, all that kind of stuff. Now they might have sent some money, pardon my French on that, but they wasn't. Okay,
Right.
everybody didn't go to jail with Bill Clay at Jefferson Bank. Okay, I did. You can almost count on one hand who stayed in jail with Bill. Them 90 days.
What's
Okay.
my man that protested at the Arch? What was his name?
But Percy Green.
Percy
Okay.
Green.
Yeah.
Percy
One
Green.
brother.
Everybody,
He was
everybody
the
went with
only
him.
one that climbed the arch.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is the resistance. The reason you have guerrilla armies, because the resistance can't never get enough troops to stage a battle with the establishment. So you undermine it by who you are in the resistance. And all you can tell people is welcome to the resistance. Okay? You ain't promising no victory or anything, but here is and I don't, I'm gonna say it's a metaphor and not an analogy. but where ultimately numbers don't matter, and it changed the course of Western history, which changed the course of world history. Uh, 24, 20, 25, 2,600 years ago, maybe longer than that, the Persian Empire was the biggest, strongest in the Mediterranean part of the world. China is a whole different animal, and nobody knew where the Americas were. And Xerxes was going to invade Greece again, and he had this huge army, and the Greeks were disorganized and no match for them. Couldn't have beat them in a battle. But Xerxes' army had to pass through had to get through a small pass where all of them couldn't get through at the same time to get into Greece. It was the pass at Thermopylae. And military folks, the Spartans in particular, said, you could probably got a chance of stopping him and doing some damage there. But by and large, the Greeks, even the Spartans, everybody said, oh, we can't do that. I don't want to go. The Spartans say, we got this religious thing going this week. We can't go. Now, everybody, looks at the movie and stuff, but the movie is based on a real historical fact. Xerxes was one of Leonidas was one of the Spartan kings, took a group of volunteers, his personal guard, and they rounded up some Greeks who wanted to go with him along the way. And they said, our job is to beat Xerxes to the pass at Thermopylae. And they did. And when they asked him, what are the orders of the day, his history records this. He said, send words to send the Greeks this message. Tell them we stand here obedient to their will. And from this line, we don't retreat. Now, the point is, they got wiped out, but they literally slowed the invasion, which gave the Greeks chance to get organized, and the Athenian Navy wiped out the Persian Navy. A little while later, Xerxes had to retreat. The Persians never came back to Greece, and the rest literally is history. One battle, people outmanned. They didn't know that was going to be a historic defining moment. They just showed up for the resistance. So my point is, what you got to be willing to do is be in the resistance. However you can be in the resistance. You can't particularly worry who go show up. All of us ain't here. All of us ain't gonna never be here. And that fundamentally is the reality. Wish we were, but fundamentally we ain't. Basically, enslaved people could have murdered every white plantation owner and got away with it. Now, I don't know what would have happened afterwards, but all them folks would have been dead. They could have walked off. There were more black people enslaved in South Carolina than there were white people. That's why this whole compromise with the Constitution, 3/5. If you were just to count white people, there wasn't enough white people in the South. So
do you think part of that? Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you think part of that problem with them not doing that is because they were in a foreign land? They just didn't know if they killed them, where to go or what to do. It would have been, I guess.
Yeah, that is part of it. But it's not that they didn't do it.
But hold that point.
And it was done. That's what we needs to
Yes,
be.
Right.
it
But
happened.
That's what needs
It,
to be broadcast.
yes,
There
it
were
happened.
there were countless
and
insurrections.
then what
But
I
you
know
do?
that.
but
I'm
the
just saying. I just think it would have been more likely if
No,
they.
it
most
You don't think
happened.
so?
most people ain't built like that.
Okay.
Because what you could have
Okay.
done is just kill them and then figure out how you go later.
Go
Okay.
later. Right. You
Okay,
right. You right.
you don't have
This
to work it all out at one time.
Well, at one time. You right.
the
Okay,
Stonewall
Absolutely.
Rebellion happened in South Carolina.
right.
And so it's not that we didn't do it, it's that the retribution was so great. And ultimately, folks was like, because again, the so Gerald, the piece of it that you said is what we always have to remember is that so what Mike alluded to this is that so like we got a couple of things that we've gotten wrong, correct? So we think we've confused critical mass with majority.
Right.
You don't need a majority. You need a critical mass. Right. We've also confused leadership with charismatic leadership. Right. So we waiting for all the Negroes to come under the leadership of the next Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't gonna happen.
Right.
Right. What we've seen over time, and because again, we are totally dependent on white supremacists for our education. We don't have a good sense of the numerous rebellions. We don't have a good sense of the relative success of rebellion. We think all rebellions were failed. X number of rebellions were failed. I mean, the Underground Railroad is a rebellion. So each time somebody accessed the Underground Railroad, however we conceptualize it, it did not get, well, actually, whether they got recaptured or not, each time that somebody fled a plantation, that was rebellion. And they won, whether they got captured, whether they got recaptured or not.
Charles, just hold that point just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this before, but I want to say it again literally to the point that Charles just made. Oppressed people win when they resist, not when they overcome.
Mm-hmm.
The victory is in the resistance. The whole concept behind Camus' essay on the myth of Sisyphus in that rock in that hill is his resistance to the gods that makes him the victor. It ain't the fact that the rock keeps rolling back down. It's the fact that he says, I don't give a damn how many times the rock rolls down here, I'm pushing the bitch back up.
Yes.
In that moment, he's the victor.
He's the victor.
When you resist, you have won, no matter what the material consequences, circumstances happen to be. It is the mental, as George Clinton said, when you free your mind, your ass will follow. Okay?
Exactly.
And that's a law of physics.
Yes.
Go ahead, Charles. I'm sorry.
And to that point again, okay, so I'm not going to flee into, and this goes to your question, Attorney Christmas. So I'm not going to flee into this wilderness and not know where I'm going, but I ain't going to harvest this crop either. How many spoiled crops were there?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Boss, all your hammers is broke. Boss, the plow is broke. Boss, your cows is dead. Boss, the horses is dead. Boss, all them trees is bearing bad fruit. There are numerous stories about how we resisted part of the reason that we even have a stereotype about lazy Negroes is because we didn't work when we didn't want to work. That was resistance. Now they flipped that into a stereotype that, again,
right. They flipped that into a stereotype when we were working sun up to sundown.
We work from sun up. Ain't no such thing as a lazy Negro.
Right. And if you were working in that time period from sun up to sundown and you got a break, there's no way in hell you're gonna rush back to be on that position again. You're gonna make that break last as long as possible.
Yes. So all of these things were resistance. We've internalized the negative stereotypes that they needed in order to kind of justify their order.
Wait a minute.
And I think too, that's why when you talk about Kwanza, it's so important, because this is when you can have these conversations with people as you relate them back to the principles when you talk about self-determination or collective work and responsibility of what we're doing and what we need to be doing, and how, you know, the act of resistance is so important. But this allows us that space to have these conversations.
And that's why I'm saying we can't be looking at Israel as a damn model. The Colored People's Convention is our model. That's our model.
The UNIA is our model.
The UNIA is our model.
The
Stonewall Rebellion is our model. Nat Turner is our model. Denmark Vesey is our model. Those, Gabriel Prosser, those are our models. Those are our models, not a white supremacist settler colony. That can't be our model.
Not at all.
We were doing this before them.
No. I would take Jesus' rebellion as our model. I love that.
We have that can't be our model. We can't, and we gotta straighten up again. Go back to the guy that's taking all of the money. First of all, what we got to know is that APIC, the initial name was the American Zionist, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the name of that organization is now, it started off with the American Zionist, blah, blah, blah. So whatever that P is, used to be a Z. It was the American Zionist, blah, 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 blah. They changed it because it was too easily identifiable with white supremacy, period. And so we got to hold our people in account. And so, but that's a part of the collective work and responsibility. We got to hold people to account. So he in right now, y'all got to vote that Negro out when you get the chance, because he's beholden to white supremacists, period. And we always got to know that they exist. There's a great movie to watch. It's called Spies of Mississippi. And it talks about the infrastructure that existed in Mississippi to infiltrate Black organizations, right? And so we talk about COINTELPRO, and COINTELPRO is a thing. And by the way, much of COINTELPRO was tested in St. Louis. The Globe Democrat was a part of COINTELPRO. St. Louis is a hotbed for everything.
I was just getting ready to say, why is it you think so much gets tested here? It's such a hotbed for these types of activities.
Because we the middle of the United States.
We the South.
Yeah,
we ain't the middle of the United States. We the South. There's fundamentally
no difference
between Missouri and Mississippi, which makes St. Louis Birmingham. Okay,
we are the South, and so we the Mid-South. So, we the gateway to the West. And if we the gateway to the West, I think by default, we necessarily the gateway to the East, North, and the South. And so it's a thing. And so You can find some literature that even states like, so when we look at them turning the dogs, and so Mike Jones just mentioned Birmingham. When there's some literature that says what we saw in Birmingham and what Bull Connor is in Birmingham, is that
Right.
what, and
Right.
the turning of the dogs on the people, that happened in St. Louis first too. You know, early. I mean, we've talked about the lunch counter demonstrations with CORE at Stinksbury Book. That's St. Louis. I mean, say all of this stuff. Much of this stuff. It's the History Museum has a whole exhibit called St. Louis First, where St. Louis is is ground zero for much of this stuff. And so,
Restrictive covenants and everything else.
yes,
It
yes,
has
yes,
everything.
yes,
St. Louis has
yes,
everything.
yes.
Red Scott, we've got
The
everything.
segregation, the segregation battles, all of those kind of things. And so, this is the collective work, and this is why we do the show. This is what it means to level set, right? Is that we contextualize these things so that people can take this information and do with it what they will. What we want them to do is some more research, read a couple of articles. You ain't got to read no book. You can read articles. So don't be scared of the book. Read an article and take that information, take that right and correct information and share that with somebody else and do something. Do something. Each one teach one, whatever, I think
We need them to join the resistance.
we need them to join the resistance and just like, so my favorite movie franchise, I'm a Star Wars guy. That whole thing is about the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Star Wars is about. It's about the resistance, right? So most people are caught up in Luke Skywalker's daddy issues, but it's about the resistance. It's about the fight between good and evil and oppression. And so that's the nature of our fight. It's about good and evil and the oppression. And so the Nguzo Saba gives us, a perspective and a way of relating that allows us to fight this fight. Right. And so it's about, again, we got yesterday, Kuji Shagalia. It's about being self-determined. We are vulnerable because this, again, as I said earlier, this is a highly materialistic space. So we got to do a lot of work in that collective and cooperative space.
But isn't that just amazing how you can flip one's worth to material items? It's just, I mean, just an inculcation that is
we still
beyond
products.
anything.
We are products.
Right.
And then we're in a capitalistic society where
Right.
everything is based on that.
It
Everything is
is.
based on what you
It
possess. And for
is.
us, suffering from low self-esteem, we buy more things to impress than we do fundamental things that we
We are
need.
currency, bro. And so that's a part of the fight. That too is a part. So to
I
your
was in
point,
the airport,
attorney.
just on that notion, I just want to say I was in the airport and I was just observing the people in the airport, and I was especially, just observing our people. It's hard to find our people moving around and they don't have on some type of designer label, even if it's just the slides that they're wearing. It's just the whole concept that we feel like, we have to have on these designer labels or have to be wearing this to help improve our self-esteem.
And even that, I don't want us to get too far off on that because, brother, you've been to Ghana, so you probably went to Ashanti land, and so it's not that it's not that we don't like nice things. All of that isn't all of that isn't grounded in our oppression. It's distorted because of our oppression. We come from a land of wealth.
Right.
And so, all of us didn't have that wealth. And that's the other part of this whole narrative that we got to tell. Our oppression, many of us were oppressed there, which is how we got here. And so we gotta wrangle all of these things in. Our subjugation didn't necessarily start when we landed here. Some of us were oppressed there. The issue is that system wasn't slave based. Those economies were not slave based. You were not a slave for life anywhere in Africa. Slavery was a situational thing. It wasn't a dispositional thing. Here, it was dispositional. You black, you a slave. There, it was situational. And if you happen to be that in the midst of the onslaught of the Portuguese and the Spanish and then the British and then all them other European countries, then that became your lot in life. But that's not how it was there. And so, so these are just all of the things that we have to kind of break down and have these conversations about so that people are clear and what we are talking about. So it's kind of like what's that Liam Neeson movie Taken, right? Human trafficking. Like, it's rare that you hear people talk about slavery in terms of what it really was. It's just human trafficking.
And Charles, to that point, I stumbled on this reality. I won't even call it a fact because the fact was out there all the time, but I had no awareness of the depth of it. But if you talked about what's the most traded commodity in the history of civilization, okay, from the time we got settlements and started having places, cities, societies, the most traded commodity is human beings.
Mm-hmm.
You literally cannot find an era where people are not used as commodity value and trade. So the notion of human trafficking and enslavement seems to be endemic of human beings. Okay, I mean it's a feature, not a bug of humanity. Because you can't find an era, and you can't find no place on the planet where it didn't exist. White people in America will say, well, slavery, human trafficking happened everywhere. And opposition it should be, but we talking about us and your ass, okay? All that other stuff is irrelevant. I'm talking about what I think you owe me for this. And I would believe Charles referenced the movie, and I'll reference one. And I think this should always be our mentality. We need to be Sicilian. And just like Michael told his brother-in-law, somebody got to pay for Santino. So it don't make no difference when it happened. I owe you for that. And if I can't collect the bill, I'll pass it on to my sons to collect. But we go collect on that bill. And the fact that the person we go collect from didn't have nothing to do with it don't even matter to me. Because I owe him. And that's how we ought to be looking at America. So you can't make up for that. You can't apologize for it. Ain't no forgiveness for it. The fact that it happened every place in the world forever, I don't care about that. Just about me and you. And until we get that level of mental toughness, our stuff will always be messed up like it is.
And how do you think is the best way for us to move towards that?
This is it. This this this
This
this is
this
what
this plat
this is
one of
what
these
Baba.
platforms like this.
Here's what level set is.
This is what, yeah, this is what level set is.
Charles just alluded to it. We here for the brother and sister that needed to be here today. Not for everybody, because everybody ain't gonna get it. We here for the one. Larry, Charles, you might have saw this. Cher was in this movie where she was a public defender, and I can't forget who was in it. And in the beginning of the movie, she's complaining about how terrible her life is, and how and she got this job where she's defending all these people that are obviously guilty and should be locked up and all that. And she said, I don't even know why I keep doing this. And her boss looks at her and say, well, you do this for the same reason we all do it. And she said, what's that? He said, for the poor son of a bitch that didn't do it. That's why you here. Okay? You ain't here for the folks that are guilty. You ain't here for the people that ain't gonna get it. You're here for the one who needed to be saved, who came to be saved today. And so we show up, we do what we do, and as y'all would say on Sunday, and the doors of the church are open.
That's right.
And let he whosoever will come.
That's
and that's
right.
how you got to keep doing it.
That's it. Repetition, keep doing it. It reminds me of my favorite designer is a noob out of DC, Everett Hall. I've had the pleasure of representing him and working with him, but long before I could afford him, I really admired him. And when I moved my office to DC, just so happened, well, the first place I went when I got to DC was to his shop. That's how much I admired him. But we have become like brothers, me and his brothers, over time. And I had met with them right after a buying season. They would buy their boats of fabric from all over the country. And it's called Everett Hall's Designs, and it's run by three brothers. And so they had just gotten back from one of the trips, and they had sent all the suits to manufacture. And Everett was disappointed because he didn't buy enough boats to produce this one particular fabric. The brothers looked at him and said, "Don't worry about it. We know how angry you were at us in the negotiations. So we went ahead over your objections behind your back and ordered 4 additional boats. So we're gonna be able to make those prints like we thought we should have made them. Because we did that in spite of you, because we knew you and our customers." And Everett just hugged them and kissed them at that point. But that's the way we got to be. We know there are going to be some. That's how King was. Over the objections of all these so-called little pastors that's running around now talking about they were with him. Over the objections of all these educators that said that they were with him. When you know what's right, you do what's right. Period.
There's a church here. There's a church on King Drive that changed. They had an entrance on the side of the church, on one of the side streets. The pastor so disagreed with King that he changed the address to the side street from King Drive so that his address wouldn't be da 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 King Drive.
Yeah.
And so, and so that's the other thing is like we romanticize this fight. This fight is just the fight. It's the struggle. It's the resistance. And we long for back in the day. And so that's the crazy thing. Like, it's interesting to sit and listen to the critiques of Trump. When he's like, make America great again. We do the same thing. We reminisce about a time when we was being lynched. We do this all the time. It wasn't good then. That's why we celebrate King. That's why we celebrate Malcolm. It was not good then.
Do you think that it was not a good time? I understand all of that, Dr. Alexander, but do you think that people reminisce, and I'm not really talking about because I really think it stops a lot at our generation. Like I don't think younger generations that I know my children don't, but I heard a lot of reminiscing growing up. And do you think that is because of not the fact that there were not hard times then, but it was the unity that they had at
It
that
was
time
a
period?
forced and imposed unity. That's
It
the
was
other
that
part.
forced and imposed unity. I'm
And
not
so I mean,
disagreeing
so
with that,
we
but
got,
but they did. There was a time period when they think about neighborhoods. And Mike,
but
I would like to
attorney,
hear
we
your.
got to look
I'd
at it
like to hear.
that way. We got to look at it that way.
Right.
There
I
was
know it was forced,
always.
but I think that people had very good memories of those times living in those
I'm not
neighborhoods
saying that.
and
I'm
living
not saying
around each other.
nobody. I'm not saying nobody didn't. I ain't saying that nobody had a good time. I am saying that all of those things that are happening now. So
Oh,
we can
you
go
said
back.
all those things that are happening now were happening then
Yes,
also. And if
yes,
not more. Oh, of course. Of course.
yes. We can go. So I have this argument with jokers here all the time. They be telling me about how there is no time. There is no time. That's just so they started count. So I got all of the police reports. I got the police annual reports from 1965 to current. It's always been, you know, 900, 800, 700 murders in Chicago. And so I was talking to a guy one day. He was like, "Oh, when I came up, they were still, there wasn't no shooting. They were still fighting, fist to fist." Lying. I can't. Larry, when Larry got here, when I got here, it was 1,000 murders.
They killed Cochise then.
I mean, Stone and Robert are a thing,
They
right?
are a thing, man. Those cats still riding around.
Stone and Robert was running around when I got here.
Right.
And so, Cooley High wasn't no made up thing.
No.
It just didn't happen here. Cooley High is in Detroit because it was
Right.
bad there too, right?
Right.
It was bad there too. It's just what Cooley High ain't in Chicago. And so we have these narratives like back in it, we lived together because of restrictive covenants. That's why we lived together. Them doctors and lawyers didn't want to live with the janitors. Them Negroes was classes then. And so it is what it is. We just got to be honest about it.
Let me ask you all this. We've got through slavery. We've got through Jim Crow. We got through Reagan. One term of Trump. Are we going to get through integration?
We're going to get through this term of Trump. But the issue is, what is it going to look like for us relative to the least of these? This is where we got to stand up.
So who is the us then? So that's the
And
question.
Mike, what's your
Who is
thought
the
on that?
us?
Because you've been through some of these time periods and you were more conscious of them than we were at the time.
I won't argue. Here's the problem or the issue. I won't call it a problem. Here's the issue with analysis. It always feels different than it looks looking back. Okay, so I have at this point in life, I have a sense of us in a continuum. Okay, I don't. I think I said last week or a couple of weeks ago. I don't think we made progress. I think our situation has evolved. The material circumstance, the superficial material circumstances may look different. The underlying reality is the same, but it is nuanced differences. if you watch that bad football game on Christmas Day, uh, Beyonce's performance was extraordinary. Now that couldn't have happened in America 40 years ago. It just wouldn't have. But I don't call her doing Cowboy Carter at halftime on Netflix. I don't call that progress. Okay, that can't be construed as progress. So we take these events, and we do that all the time. We measure progress by how elites life like
how an individual lives.
Yeah,
Yes.
on the individual, and we deal with it at the top. We have Egypt as a great civilization because of its engineering and some of its achievements. Egypt was a hell of a place for the average Egyptian 3,000 years ago. That was slave labor. All the people was working for the pharaoh for free, for groceries by and large. So we don't view history from the viewpoint of the average person. History is a function of the written record, and the written record is always about people who were in power, who are in the privileged classes, never about the average person in any era. So my position would have to be that as an individual basis, there are individual opportunities that people benefit from now that they couldn't benefit from. Oscar Robertson couldn't make $50 million a year playing basketball. He had to have another job when he was he won the greatest basketball player in his era had to have a second job when the season was over. And guys whose names you can't even remember make $20 million a year. Now, I don't know if that's progress. It's just basketball players get paid more. So you really have to say it wasn't better or worse. It's just different. But my fundamental analysis is that the structural tensions and the dynamic in the society really hasn't changed, probably gotten worse because it is harder for the average person to be okay now probably than it was then. But it's a lot easier for those who are better educated, and a lot of us now fall into that category. We may not have all of the opportunities, but I would be lying if I said my life, my career, that I've done things that I could not have imagined. I mean, at 20 years old, you wouldn't have told me would be in 2 meetings with the vice premier of China, with 2 United States senators.
Mike Jones.
But that don't mean I think that America is better, because it was
just an individual achievement as opposed to how the people are moving.
And that's what I'm talking about. You can't confuse your individual achievement with our collective.
But that is the tricky part.
And then we are very much so, and I think that's an excellent point, because we are very much caught up in what some Black people have achieved individually, and we want to make that our achievement too.
But that's the tricky part about
and that's the tricky part.
When
he talked about the halftime show, we watching Beyonce, we made that part of our achievement, but that wasn't our
It
achievement. That was an
is,
opportunity.
it is. That's a part of that's the trickiness of collective and cooperative. Now the issue is, do we realize that real time? So
No, no, we
right.
don't
So
realize it in
But
real
but
time.
it's also
the
it's
problem
also the
isn't
trickiness of capitalism, because
that. Yes,
capitalism
yes,
will show you they made it, therefore you can make it. When
and
in
that's not
it's
true,
rigged
right?
for you not to make it. It's
Right.
rigged for you
And
not.
so
I can
we
tell you
can't
that
be
two, three
satisfied
guys
with that.
right now have.
And it's rigged for her to make it.
I can tell you right now that you three guys right now are not the outcome that this system chose
Right.
for you all.
Right.
You're not.
Correct.
My
Right.
mother
We
would
are
tell
Correct.
the
me all the time,
resistance.
your success is slipping through the cracks for them.
Right.
So
So,
you need
but
to understand that.
couple
And
things.
goes back to the point that we made last week, that we fail to make enough. That it's hard to be black in this system. Period.
It just takes a nation of millions to hold us back. Just quick thing. Other than the Bible, there is nothing to suggest that Egypt is erected on slave labor. So, other than the Bible, everything else is pretty clear that that's not what happened. But with Egypt as a moniker, because of the Bible, we don't even appreciate it. We don't appreciate the greatness of the high culture and civilization of Egypt because we associate everything with Pharaoh.
And Elizabeth Taylor as
Kemet
Right.
Cleopatra.
is ours.
Elizabeth Taylor
It's
starring as Cleopatra.
ours. Kemet is ours.
But we
You
don't
know,
understand that, Dr.
it's,
Alexander. So many
it's
people, have that Elizabeth Taylor idea of,
I get it,
Cleopatra of
but
Egypt.
but that's why we are here, and that's
Right.
and so and
It's
it's
just
not
like
just
what
us
happened to
that
white Jesus is in the churches, or even sometimes,
all of this
I
stuff,
went to churches in Africa with white Jesuses. It made you just want to get up and be the resistance and take it down.
all of this stuff is available. The crazy thing about that, attorney, is that I only know that I can go to one church right now. I could go to one church, maybe two. I can go to one church right now that I know I'm gonna see a black Jesus. It just so happens that both of those churches are Catholic, and the priest in both of those churches is white. One of them is Flager's church, and the other it's another white cat. I think it's a Saint Mark's or something like that. It's in uh I can't remember the name of that community. It's in the 80s or somewhere in there. But we have internalized all of that stuff. But again, that is a part of that's a part of the oppression and the subjugation. That is psychological misorientation. Our point of reference is white. Many of us pray to a blonde hair, blue eyed white man, and we bless our food to him. We give thanks to him for everything.
And wondering how you can't get a prayer through. Wonder why you can't get a prayer through.
That's just a reflection of our
That's the
state.
problem.
But
He said,
again,
if he called me by my name, his
but
name is Yeshua. His name is
is
Yeshua.
new.
You got this sissy on your wall. That's Constantine's nephew that you praying to.
And none of this is new. E. Franklin Frazier wrote Black Bourgeoisie in the 50s and published it in 62. So we was playing then. And so this is a nature of the struggle. And so we just got to be clear that this is the nature of the struggle. We got to fight. Gil Scott's like Gil Scott's parents said the revolution will not be televised.
Right.
Negroes still stuck on the TV part. The whole point of the song is that this is the revolution, right? But most folks don't understand it as such. And so we got to work hard to shift our frame of reference. We got to shift our frame of reference. We got to be honest about what we're looking at and why. We got to look at as referred to before. So when the United Nations was voting to say yes to Israel in the 1940s, that was not an option for us. When in the 50s, last week we were talking about we claimed genocide, we charged genocide. There were no allies for us at the international level. When Malcolm went and tried to get in front of the United Nations, the African countries, we had 3, 4, maybe 5 independent countries at that time, and they were fragile. Like I'm not looking at the dates, but I don't know when Patrice Lumumba got assassinated relative to when
About
Malcolm
60, I think 63, something like that.
60.
Early mid 60s at the latest.
And so was that before Malcolm went, or why?
About the same, literally about the same time.
Right. And so he couldn't. What he was trying to do was absolutely the right thing to do. It just couldn't happen because of the dynamic. And so we keep looking at this other model like it's a thing, as if we have not tried everything. We are literally fighting against empire.
Right.
There's a book about the Black Panthers that's about, I think that's the title. It was like Black Against the Empire or something like that. It's a narrative about the Panthers. But even the Panthers, we don't have that narrative right. The Panthers they were at their heights. They were great for about 3 years. The rest of it, they was getting their asses kicked. Them just the facts. And every organization, this is a part of the congressional report. If you study COINTELPRO, every sorority, every church, all the Elks, all the Masons, every single Black entity was infiltrated. Period. This is what we're fighting against all the time. And we're still infiltrated.
That's what I was getting ready to
That's
say.
why
You
we
say
need to do
was
what we're doing. We don't need
infiltrated.
to
You
be
want to say
scared about white
is
folks knowing what we're
infiltrated.
doing, because they already know, because we infiltrated.
Right.
Well, here's what I want to say. I think is a little different now than then. I think that the evil empire was a lot more competent then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The United States was a legitimate world power and acted like it, and had the ability to manipulate, undermine all across the planet. And it did. The reason I think we're in a good place is because the empire has gone from a Franklin Roosevelt, or hell, I'll say Richard Nixon or Lyndon Johnson. I'm speaking now as a politician, all extraordinarily competent politicians. I'm not talking about their personalities. I'm just talking about their ability to make it do what it do. And now we got the most ignorant, incompetent, immoral white boy. Donald Trump is a blessing if you're in the resistance. This is like going from Julius Caesar or Augustus to Caligula. Okay, I mean, if you can't beat Caligula, you ain't got no business being free. I mean, this the fight we've been waiting on. Okay, handling Julius Caesar or Augustus was a handful. Okay, no question about it. Them Roman legions were elite. them generals were elite. This is poor white trash. Okay, if this is the best white supremacy can do, we got this locked up. Just the only question is when is the damn thing gonna collapse? All we
But,
need to do is gather up our things and get out the way.
but
Cause
Mike,
what?
you don't think that we overstate the Kennedys?
Huh?
Joseph Kennedy he's a criminal.
I ain't talking about the criminal part. I'm talking about competence and intelligence now.
But I'm
Okay?
just saying.
I,
I
I
just
I'm
saying.
not I'm
I'm
not
saying.
making
I
I'm not
all I'm
here.
positing is that the press was really different then.
Okay,
The Kennedys, all of the stuff that we talk crazy about Donald Trump, we could find most of that stuff with John, Bobby,
okay, but but
and the
but
youngest cat.
here's what I'll say from and so this is not a bourgeois analysis. This is a more folks for folks who live outside the system. All those guys were as morally reprehensible as Trump at a personal level, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't judge people's personal morality because I really don't give a shit about that. But all of them understood that the job was keep the game going. Okay, what separates a good hustler and a legitimate gangster from a corporate bourgeois business type is a hustler got to keep the game going. So they cheat, they steal, but they ain't gonna never bust the game out because they got to come back tomorrow and make it. So what they were doing is keeping the game going though. So they maintained illusions and some other shit. Now you got these third, fourth generation privileged hospital cotton soft as shit who fundamentally, and Trump is just greedy, ignorant, and incompetent. So for them, they stealing everything all the time. And they're doing it in broad daylight. And they don't even, my father used to say, a good hustler, when he gets paid, everybody gets paid.
So then why
So,
they shoot him?
huh?
So then why they shoot him?
Why did they who?
Why they kill him?
Oh, well, that's business. Okay, shit.
Well,
I
that's my
mean,
point.
no, I'm
I'm
not
saying them
talking.
guys the same crooks as he is,
Again,
and when they went left, they killed him. Both of them.
okay, and they kept the game going. Okay, and that's all. And that's all I'm saying. I don't think Trump can maintain the empire. I don't think Trump. I think Trump is Caligula. Okay, Nero. I don't think he could do what a Julius Caesar. Caligula couldn't do what Augustus did. Okay.
I do think that. So what I think about the Kennedys is that they are classes, and that's why they had problems in the South, and that's why they was trying to ignore what was going on in the South. And the difference between them and this guy now is that he understands that 2/3 of the illiterate people in the United States are white.
Right.
And he said that before he ran.
But Charles,
and he's able to manipulate them and move them to vote against their interests,
Charles,
because the number one reason why people vote against their interests is ignorance. That's
right.
the number one reason.
But I'm saying if you were talking about the post World War II America, the 50s, 60s, these guys are running a global empire. Okay, and they are aware that they're running a global empire. So all of their moves are about maintaining the empire. So for me, the progress quote that we made doing civil rights in the 50s didn't have anything to do with uh, enlightenment on race or Dr. King
Right.
and them. It had to do with the United States trying to freeze Russia out of influence in Africa and Asia. So they had to do something about their apartheid part of America. They ain't had a damn thing to do with us. It had everything to do with these global power plays.
Mhm.
I'm saying now the empire is collapsing. Okay, America's footprint is shrinking, and it damn
Exactly.
sure doesn't have the leverage that it had. And that's how you get somebody as clueless and as incompetent as Trump, and more importantly, the clown show around him. It ain't just him; it's all of them. So literally, he they don't have the competence to maintain the infrastructure. Now the other guys were just as malevolent, but they were a lot smarter and more competent, which made them much more dangerous. Trump is dangerous because he is that ignorant and incompetent. So you have no idea what he was going to do. You could have predicted that Kennedy and them, or it was at the time, was going to kill Patrice Lumumba, and they had already found Joseph Mobutu. Trump couldn't pull that off if his life depended on it.
But you
And
don't
and
you
and,
don't
and at the
think
same
that the
time,
point
at the
the
same
one
time,
percent or the 0.5%, you don't think that if they didn't want this guy, he wouldn't be gone?
Well, I think the whole ruling class is affected by the bankruptcy. Call it the moral bankruptcy, intellectual bankruptcy. These are people who inherited this. They didn't build it. Somebody gave it to them, and they got no idea what it took, and the ruthlessness, the toughness, the literally the street smarts that it takes from going to robbing liquor stores to running an international drug ring. Okay? Now somebody hands you that, your daddy hands it to you, or your grandfather hands it to you, you think this shit is automatic. So what they've already, the United States has already been outmaneuvered by the Chinese
and
globally.
that's
The
that,
only
that and
the
that's
only
where I'm
question is
going.
when the end comes.
And
Mm-hmm.
BRICS is a real thing.
Right,
And Chinese have certainly have a much larger footprint in Africa than the United States. At the same time,
Exactly.
the Latin countries
right,
have rejected, and your embargoes are not working in the Latin countries. The principle, the solidarity principle that we're talking about now. If you want to look at a model, I think the model you need to look at is Cuba, and you need to look at Venezuela if you
right.
want to look at a model, because their solidarity, their solidarity has trumped their want for material items and their want for basic things like food, as opposed to allowing you to come in and to exploit them. With respect to the issue with COINTEL, here's the problem that we have right now. They turning our mics on right now, and they can, they hear anything we want, and we have a footprint of everywhere we've been. So, we've got some, we still have some very serious issues, and I do still believe, I firmly believe, and to be honest with you, I go through these rosters of the organizations that I'm a part of, and I look and I ask, okay, what's odd about this person? Can this person be trusted? Is this a person in COINTEL? So, I mean, these are things that we have to have these ongoing discussions about.
Well, Larry, what you can just assume is that the cards are marked, the dice are loaded, and the room is bugged. Okay, so you go in with that with those assumptions.
Every day. That's the way to go. That is the way to go. Well, listen, gentlemen, I think let's have a closing statement from each. with respect to these principles of Kwanzaa. And let's go ahead and thereafter move to exercise all of the full body um, adoption of these principles and to broadcast those as broad as we can possibly can. And we can start with you, Dr. Christmas.
I think that the principles of Kwanzaa are essential to our development. It's essential to the resistance, and it's essential for us to maintain this unity, to maintain these principles, and to exercise these on a daily basis. And this is our last show of this year. When we come back again, we'll be in the new year. So I just want to say to the audience that we have that we want to keep up this resistance, and we want our resistance to continue to be stronger as we move forward, especially in the 2025 when we talk about going into this Trump administration, and that we focus on uh, bringing ourselves together and focus around these principles, as Mike said, because I believe, like he said, the destruction is coming and that we have to be prepared for it. And these principles are what helps us to become prepared for these situations. And lastly, I want to say just how much I have enjoyed this year having these conversations with the three of you all. You know, they always tell you that if you're the smartest person in your group, you need a new group. And I'm by far not the smartest person in this group, and I love it. I love it because it challenges you every day, every time to be better. And it's no better place than I would want to be on Saturday morning. So thank you.
Dr. Alexander, first of all, Gerald, I don't even think, as an individual, I can respond to that. I think that's a collective response we're going to have to that. But I mean, ditto, I feel the same way. Dr. Alexander?
I'm gonna start with our group is better than everybody else's group because we got D. Mike Jones, and so
That is for sure.
and so.
We got the Steph Curry. That's
Oh my gosh,
Stephen Curry. Except
we got Steph. We trying to make sure he
hey,
got enough
if,
help.
if Steph was 6'7", if
We
Steph
trying
was
to make
six
sure
seven, he'd be Mike Jones.
we trying to make sure Steph got enough help. And so Umoja. So we gotta have unity. And in that unity, we gotta believe, we gotta, so we gotta go from the Umoja all the way through, but we definitely gotta, we gotta be on that other end, and we gotta believe in the people. We gotta have that faith in the people. This thing necessarily it has distorted us. And so we, as I said earlier, we got to do some work in that, cooperative and collective space, because that's what this system kind of dictates. And not that we want this system to rule us. We just got to think creatively, Kumba, and the ways in which we get the people's attention. Right. And so we get the people's attention, and then we do what's necessary, right? And so we know what the purpose is, right? And we are self-determined. And so like we know all of these principles. We just gotta do it. We gotta move, that's that unity. We gotta move as a team. We can't be encumbered by the fact that a critical mass does not dictate majority. It ain't never been such, and that's what Mike was referring to earlier. We got to quit, glorifying the struggle, because when we do that, we get it wrong. And so we keep thinking there was this time like we're waiting for all of us to unite and do da 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 da, and that ain't never been. And so we got to just do the fight. We got to fight the fight. We got to do what's in our measure to do, and love and believe in the people. And I think that Kwanzaa is a theory of the case. We can use that to get to where we're going.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
20/80 rule is applicable on a good day. You may not get 20%. Mike Jones.
Yeah, I will say, first of all, to the point, I think the principles, as Gerald has referred to them, as Charles had laid them out as the theory of the case, is critical to having a perspective on reality. And I would just encourage us to not take them literally, because you have to be you have to be able to improvise on what that means today in 2025 or in the 21st century, which might not be literally the same. It might not look literally the same as it did in 1966. The principle is the same, but the circumstances are different, and your applications of the principles has to evolve as the circumstances evolve. That's number one. To you three guys, man, it is a pleasure, a joy, and uplifting to spend time with the three of you on Saturday morning. And I think uh, for me, we don't miss it, and we're all here. And I think the value that we bring to other people is we're not talking to an audience. This is just our conversations with each other that our fearless leader, Larry Fields, figured out how to make available to anybody who wants to drop in, listen, or whatever. So for me, it's really like jazz was in the 30s where bebop came from. Musicians would go on their day gigs, I mean their night gig, and when the club would close down, they'd all find some place to meet and then play like they wanted to play. And from that, we moved from big bands to bebop, and the rest is kind of history. And so for me, this is our jam session where we kind of get chance to play the music we wanted to play the way we want to play it. And I think it for me it's a real intellectually, personally, and everything a whole lot of joy and satisfaction from that. And Larry, I can't do enough to thank you for, because every group's got to have a leader, Charles, and Larry is the glue. He's the
He
glue that
Otis.
holds this together. And but for his effort,
So,
that's why when Gerald, who is basically our Charlie Parker show, he know he can come late because Larry had the rest of the band. Man. So, but seriously, man, love you guys, and it's been a great year, really, and looking forward to whatever the future brings. Larry,
yeah, as we say rest in peace and deepest condolences to Dick Parsons' family and Greg Gumbel's family. I am, first of all, thankful to God that I'm alive at the same time that you all are. Because I mean, in the continuum of time, there's no, I mean, that's no guarantee. But then to be in community with you all is beyond, what I can articulate, what that's like. All three of you all have sent me to the bookstore every week, every single week. And I mean, I'm not going to go behind Mike Jones. I'm just going to tell you all I love you. Thank you so much. And, I can tell you that your lives individually are blessings to multitudes. I can tell you that. I mean, Dr. Alexander and Mike, I think you all are some of the, I mean, and JT, just some of the best minds in this country, period. I guarantee you, um, had the three of you all been a part of the Democratic machine and have influence, that election would have turned out differently. We certainly wouldn't have lost the House and the Senate. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you that. So, I mean, that's the impact that you all have, man. And I just hope, I know over time people will understand that. And I mean, like I said, I love you guys, dearly. And it is my honor to be in community with you all anytime, particularly on Saturday mornings. So thank you all for tuning in to Sharpton. I'm sorry, the level set. Thank you all to the level set, and we appreciate you all. Let's look for an incredible year. Let's keep the faith and look for an incredible year. And we hope to see you all soon. Signing out for the
Aragani.
All right, Gami.